Welcome to the All-Star Planning Podcast. My name is Kelsey, and this is the place where I talk all things teacher lesson plans. Today, I'm talking due dates. This is one of my least favorite parts of teaching. I hate due dates. I hate enforcing due dates. I don't think I'm necessarily an expert at enforcing due dates, but I'm just going to bounce some ideas off of you and kind of let you know where I have been with due dates and where I kind of sort of stand with due dates. So, in my school, it is customary for teachers to dock a kid 5 points or 5% of a grade when an assignment is turned in late. I don't know how I feel about that. But I also dock kids 10 points when they are late on assignments. And this kind of goes against a little bit what I said in the last podcast episode regarding not grading everything that kids turn in. I do firmly believe that the grades that you give kids should demonstrate their level of learning. But at the same time, I think it is very important that we make sure that kids are doing their work in a timely manner. For instance, if I assign something on January 1st and it doesn't get turned in until January 29th, we kind of have a situation where what is the value of a kid turning in an assignment 4 weeks late? Does it hold the same value? Does it give the kid any real level of practice if it's a skill that they have learned 4 weeks ago? You know what I mean? So I understand the idea of not necessarily loving or collecting late work. But this goes back to my thing about not grading everything. I grade just a few things. This is what I grade. Vocabulary assignments, lab reports, tests and quizzes. That's it. So for me, when a kid turns in a late lab report, it's not necessarily something that has that effect of like, this was turned in or this was assigned 4 weeks ago, what's the value of it now? I think that labs, personally, with me and chemistry, I think that labs absolutely maintain their value year-round. If a kid turns in a metric system lab in December when it was really due in September, obviously it's less valuable at that point because I assigned it in September because that's what the kids were learning at the time. But I think that the metric system is still a valuable skill that my chemistry students should be learning. There are a few things that don't hold up, like my safety lab, for instance. If I have a kid turn in the safety lab in April, I'm not really sure it's worth anything at that point. They have already learned all of the safety skills, or should have learned all of the safety skills by that point. So I try to only assign work for a grade that is going to be valuable for a large amount of time. If it's just something that's valuable for a day or two, I don't even think it's worth grading. I think it's just a waste of time to have the kids do it, perfect it, turn it in, have it graded. You spend the time grading it, then you have to hand it back to them, you have to go over it. The kids need to understand why they got things right or wrong. If it only holds value for a day, 2 days, 3 days, what's the point? That to me just seems silly. So that's part of the reason why I don't grade stuff like crazy. But this also comes down to due dates. So if something only holds value for a small amount of time, I don't bother grading it because then I run into an issue of, well, how much points need to be deducted for this assignment, and is it even worth accepting at this point? Should a kid spend their time on this? It's just, time is our most valuable asset ever. It's more valuable than money. Time is more valuable than anything on this planet because it's not anything that we can exchange for. You can't exchange anything for more time. So kids spending time on things that aren't worth it, you spending time on things that aren't worth it, it's more detrimental than you think it is. So I don't like to grade everything, and I don't like especially to grade things that don't have longevity. Next, my lab reports, for the most part, I close things off at the end of a quarter. So a quarter for me is like 8 or 9 weeks, sometimes 10 on the calendar, depending on how like the days off fall. But it's usually 8 to 10 weeks on a calendar, and I close things off at the end of the quarter. So if you have a lab from September, it needs to be turned in by the first week of November. It's no good in January. It's not worth anything in January. And part of that is because I need some kind of a formal boundary, but also that longevity issue. Now, when it comes to my vocabulary assignments, which are pertinent to a particular unit of study, more or less, there are words that the kids need to know from October. They need to know them in January, so there is some amount of it needs to get turned in at the right time, but also it's still worth something in a few weeks or months. So with those, I do dock the kids if they are late, and that's also because I give quizzes on their vocabulary terms. So that tiny little, and it's only 10 points, that 10-point penalty is used to kind of incentivize them to get it done on time, and I don't go crazy with their vocab. If I have a kid who turns it in one day late, for, it happens once, I'll usually give them just the 100. If it's a kid who is turning in an assignment, a vocab assignment 3 weeks after it's actually due, I'm docking them those 10 points. So I can't really say that I have a firm late policy or a due date policy because it's flexible. It changes depending on the assignment. So with labs, I usually don't dock it. I don't particularly care that much, honestly. But with the vocabulary homeworks, which are the only homeworks I actually count, I make sure to dock the kids 10 points. Part of what I do, because I do not grade every single day, I don't schedule time for it. It's really part of my method to keep my workload down is not grading everything and then not grading every single day. So I will take an entire 40-minute prep period and grade from minute 1 to minute 39. I don't pick up like 10-minute pockets here and there to grade. I like to get tunnel focused in and just grade everything at once. So all of my kids turn in all of their assignments regardless of the class, the period, the block, the day, the assignment. It all goes into one bin that I got at the dollar store, and I don't grade every day. So I actually have this stamp. I got it at Staples. It has the date on it. I'm sure that there's other stamps out there, but this is one that would be used in an office setting, like this was faxed or received or sent out or emailed, and it has like those little spinners on it, so you can adjust the title with the spinner, and then you can also adjust the date with the spinner. And I think that this has like 10 years worth of dates on it. So I just spin it, and it's always on received, and then I spin it to the correct date. So I'll go through the turn-in bin and just stamp the papers at the end of the day. I take 2 to 3 minutes and just stamp all the papers that were turned in that day. This way I know when a kid turned something in. So if there's ever an issue of, I turned it in on this day, I turned it in on that day, it's always stamped, so I know when it came in, when, quote, it's considered late, and that helps me just to keep things on track. There are times when I will just pass the bin and the stamp to a student and have them stamp it for me, but for the most part, I do it myself because it's quick and easy. You can also do the same stamp method with tests and sending things home, and when you talk to parents, and just papers that you get from administration. It's just very nice to have this stamp. It looks very official and professional, and it just helps you to keep things on track, especially when it comes to paper flow. I am very much a type B person. I am just throw it in a bin, throw it in a pile, stick it on a post-it note. That's the way I am with paper. So I'm kind of in love with that system because I don't have to be on top of due dates more or less. And then on top of that, I also have my Google Slides calendar, which is where I have my kids stay organized with their stuff. So on the calendar, it'll say we have a test, we have a quiz, this assignment is due, this lab is due, whatever. And that all goes on the calendar. So I don't have to like keep due dates in the front of my brain. I'll write them on my paper planner, my Erin Condren weekly schedule planner. I showed it on Instagram a while back, but it's just it's a schedule pad. It runs from Monday to Sunday, 1 week at a time. It looks like 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, but cut in half hot dog style. So it's just a long thing, and I'll just write in there a few due dates, and then I usually have this open on the lab counter in front of me, and I just remind kids, hey, we have a lab due tomorrow. It's also on the calendar. It's also on the unit printout I give them. And actually, something interesting, you can, if you use the Remind app, you can schedule remind blasts that go out to your class, and I have been known to do that. So I would schedule you a vocabulary assignment due tomorrow, and as long as the due dates don't change, you can schedule those ahead of time and they go out. You can also do the same thing with Google Classroom. You can send out on the stream page, you can send out announcements, and you can do the same thing with a Google email. You can send out an email to everyone on a particular email list or in a group or whatever, and those can also be scheduled. So I would look into those if possible, because it just makes my life much easier to be able to create a bunch of blasts for the kids. This is due tomorrow, this is due on Friday, this is due next week, and it just reminds them, and then I don't have to keep it in my brain. So those are really my tips with due dates. I'm not the best person for due dates tips, simply because I'm very type B when it comes to due dates, but I do try my hardest to make sure that due dates are not the reason why my kids are not doing as well as they would like to do in my class. In my opinion, grades are for grades. I don't really think that's opinion, I think that's a fact. Grades are for grading knowledge, not for grading work ethic, not for grading attentiveness to dates. Again, I said it last week in the previous episode. I understand that work ethic and being timely is a skill that kids need to learn, but I don't think that we need to teach it to them by penalizing them for late work. I'm not saying I disagree with a penalty either. I'm just saying that the due date should not be entirely there as a way to discipline kids or manage behavior. A due date should be there to manage the timeliness of an assignment or the value of the work after some amount of time has passed. If you are teaching second grade and in the first week of school they're adding double-digit numbers, and then in April when they're learning multiplication you have a kid turn in an assignment on adding, it doesn't have as much value as it had when it was first assigned. So that is the reason why we should be adding in due dates to our assignments, not really as a behavior management thing. You hear what I'm saying? And then again, I will take a kid out into the hallway and I talk to them about the importance of doing things on time. If it's a problem with an individual student, when I have kids not turn in work at all, I address it to the whole class. And I have said to kids a few times that if this were a job and I were the boss, they would have been fired. I would fire you. If you were getting paid to do this job, you would have been fired because you didn't do the things that you needed to do. You didn't get them done on time. They weren't high quality. You're late to class. Being late to work 1 time is a mistake. 2 times a mistake. 3 times, I'm not falling for it. There's something going on here and I don't like it. So I will do that with my students, and I think it partially helps because I teach 15-year-olds. So in New York, when they're 15, they can have a few different types of jobs. It's like they can get their working papers, I think, starting at 14. And then as they get older, they can do different jobs. I don't remember exactly how it works. I think as they get older, they can do jobs that are like a touch more dangerous and need a touch more responsibility, and they can work more hours. So I use that to remind my students that you're starting to work, you have a job, or you could have a job, And it's important that you do the things that your boss asks you. And if you thought that school was hard, wait until somebody's paying you real money, because that's going to be harder and the demands are going to be stricter. And I'm giving you an opportunity by not holding you to due dates super firmly, but realize that this won't slide in the real world. I don't think every kid needs to learn the hard way. Some of them do, for sure. Some kids need to learn the hard way. I am 100% on board with that. But I certainly believe that with all of the opportunities that I give my students, between the optional homework and the unlimited retakes and very loose due dates, the grades that they get are on them. So please just consider that when thinking of due dates. Consider longevity, and I know it's hard to do and tough to wrap your brain around, but due dates are really not supposed to be for behavior management. So that is what I will leave you with in terms of due dates. Again, I know I'm not an expert, but thank you for listening to my opinion on it. I would love to hear your opinions on it, so please, if you are watching on YouTube, leave a comment. Let me know what you're thinking. If you are listening to this, I'd love for you to visit my Instagram page and let me know what you think about due dates in general, because I know that there's a lot of mixed opinions on it. My Instagram handle is just my name, Kelsey Reevy, and make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss anything. If you are interested in more information on my curriculum planning methods, I have a free masterclass called the All-Star Planning Introductory Masterclass. You can find that at plan.kelseyreevy.com, and there I talk more about curriculum planning, lesson plans, feeling comfortable for observations, and implementing these things in your classroom. I also will show you a month of my Google Slides calendar so you can see what I'm talking about with these due dates. And that is all. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.